We're well, good.
Good morning and welcome to the Audit Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, October 3rd, 2024, and it's 10:34. And I'd like to go ahead and call the Audit Committee meeting to order. With that, we get the attendance, please.
Sure. It looks like the only member missing is Dr. Thomas. Otherwise, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Gavin. I appreciate that. Next, we will go to item C, review and approval minutes on September 5th, 2024. Those minutes were sent out several weeks ago, so I hope everybody had an opportunity to read those. But I'll give you a few minutes to review.
I was going to say, can I make a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Higgins, second by Commissioner Myers. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Next agenda item is item D, FY24 audit work plan.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Happy to say that as of Tuesday night, the Mayor and Commission unanimously approved the HR audit or accepted the HR audit. And that essentially closes out our FY24 work plan. So if you'll recall, we did tax assessor, economic development, and employee recruitment, hiring, and organization. So the full FY24 work plan has been completed. We're well underway into the FY25, but I just wanted to give you all that update that we will post that approved HR audit on our website and make contact with the department and let them know that during the course of the next year, we'll eventually be reaching out to them. More than likely as part of the FY26 audit work plan to do a formal follow-up. So any questions on the FY24 audit work plan activity?
There's no questions. We'll go to item E, FY25 work plan status and activities.
All right, thank you. So if you'll recall, we have our first periodic of the year, of the fiscal year, is housing and community development. That is well underway. We've actually completed the planning phase, in which case we hold the entrance conference with them, send out questionnaires to their staff. We've received those questionnaires back. We've also received all the materials back that we've requested as far as their documents and other resources. And so we've begun that analysis and we have initiated our fieldwork phase. We're going on the second week already where we have scheduled at least 2 interactions a week for the rest of the month with HCD, where we'll be interviewing staff as well as shadowing and observing them at their base on Satula Avenue. And so we anticipate that fieldwork phase wrapping up by the end of October, early November, and then essentially using the rest of November and early December to do our reporting and finish that audit up for the most part, minus any audit committee approvals and mayor and commission. We should be done with the meat of the audit by the end of the fiscal year. I mean, end of the calendar year. So well underway with that.
Given who's the interim director?
Melinda Lewin.
Okay, it's Melinda. Okay, great.
And their staff has been great to work with so far. So
Okay.
Very responsive.
Good question. Manager, do we have, John, sorry. Are we doing a search for that position right now?
We are.
Kidding.
No, we are. We're in the actually the final throes of it.
Okay.
That and the planning director position.
Okay.
Next item under the FY 25 work plan is the attestation engagement for information technology, specifically cybersecurity. I'm pleased to have the IT Director, Chief Information Officer, Travis Cooper with us today, as well as Deputy Chief Attorney Sherry Hines, and she agreed to join us today because eventually we will ask that you motion to go into executive session later as part of this meeting to discuss that in further detail for some of the comments and concerns that are exempt under Georgia law. But what I wanted to say is we've completed that engagement. You've all received a redacted version of that ahead of time. And what I'd like to do is, because the executive session is meant for the purposes of discussing cybersecurity that is specifically exempt under Georgia law, not everything is exempt in terms of just the general parameters of the report itself. And so prior to executive session, if any of you have any questions right now about just the report itself, the format, how it reads or flows, as well as just anything that is common knowledge as far as our IT department, such as just the budget, things of that nature, or the topics, general topics that we discuss, we can certainly talk about that now and save some of those other details for the executive session. But any questions, happy to entertain that, as well as if you have any for our IT Director. And we'll gladly let you know that if that question is something we have to talk about in executive session, we'll just note that. But happy to field any questions right now you may have about the cybersecurity report. You also received a copy of a memo. That will be the public-facing document related to this endeavor. And so if all is taken care of and move forward through the M&C, the one thing that will be posted is essentially this memo to indicate that this is the work that we did, and that there are many portions of it that are exempt under Georgia law, but that at least indicates to the public that we completed this task. And the reason they're not seeing a full report is because of what's listed in the memo. So if you have any questions about the memo as well.
I also missed that memo.
Okay, it should be in your packet there. It may be right at the end of that report, Commissioner. Right there.
Yeah, okay. I really missed that.
That's okay.
I have a question,
Yes.
but I'm just reading this now. It's a busy week. It's probably really basic. It should be taken into account that portions of the digital resources and hardware lay outside the physical administrative authority of the IT department. Just was curious what that meant.
And I mean, you can certainly defer to Director Cooper on that as well.
Right. So there's a few examples of that. I won't go into all the details, but a few years ago, the Animal Services Department was created, and during that time, they purchased their own software without going through IT. We have no administrative function over that software. There's also some partnerships here and there throughout the county. Georgia, the Cooperative Extension Office is kind of a quasi. We help them out with certain things, but a lot of it UGA does.
Okay.
So there are some, yes. So there's some things that we don't control. We don't control some of the computers that. When I say control, we don't purchase some of the computers like the district attorney's office uses. They're provided by the state. However, when they do come in, we do control them, but we don't own them. So there's some things like that are just kind of oddballs out there. But majority, we have our thumb under.
And the concern is, the concern is the interface between any of these other systems or software systems and our systems. So that's always
yes, ma'am.
On the internal control side, right?
Yes, ma'am. And for a variety of instances, we have firewalls in between them that we manage. So we restrict the access to and from.
That's probably in the report.
Yeah, and that's something that finer details we can talk about in executive session. But what I think the report does clearly indicate is that although, as Director Cooper indicated, the purchasing of certain technology and the ownership of it may differ in limited instances. If it sort of touches our network, Director Cooper still has controls in place for that.
Actually, I'll ask what you asked.
Okay.
So of course, I asked this session.
All right, so what I will say is we have a couple more items on the agenda before we go into executive session, but after executive session, what we'll be looking for is for you to hopefully feel comfortable enough with the document to move it onward to the mayor and commission. I've tentatively scheduled with the mayor that this be on an executive session with the mayor and commission at their agenda setting on October 15th, and he has agreed to that. So in the next 2 weeks, essentially, they would get the same document and conversation that you all are having today. And then after that, we'll essentially consider this complete because this document is not like a traditional audit where we are making recommendations and findings and things like that. This is not something that will have an agenda report that goes to the mayor and commission for formal acceptance or approval. It's essentially to bring awareness to them on the topic as they go into budget season and make other decisions. But after that executive session, we'll essentially move onward from this. It won't show up for a formal vote before that. So. All right.
Any questions from the committee? I know, like Kara, I sort of skimmed over this. I get a bit more detail before our work session, but I think this is some good stuff that that's going to help us, with our cybersecurity moving forward. So,
All right, the next item on our FY25 work plan status is there was a request to sort of look into bylaws for you all as a committee. We provided you a base draft of that, and it's obviously a work in progress. We just wanted to get something out to you as a quick turnaround, but to get you thinking about it as we continue in this conversation over the next couple months. We're certainly willing to take your feedback on it. We also have Attorney Hines that if you had any questions today about what bylaws can and cannot do or what should be in them, we'll certainly work with her and her office to make sure that these are in line with ACC Gov protocol. But not everything in there has to be in there, and obviously there are some things that can be added. So just consider that as we go forward. But if you have any questions right now or concerns, let me know.
I think this while for earlier, I think that's a good start. And just for the audit committee, and Carol knows, one of the things although we're not so much of a BAC, one of the things that we're trying to streamline a little bit is make sure that all boards, authorities, and commissions have bylaws. And that's why we're trying to get bylaws from all the committees. So that's one thing that we're doing. A little bit of brief history about that while we decided to put bylaws in place, because it's something that we should be doing. And I'm not sure in the past, that was in the bylaws for the audit committee. No. Okay. So this will start for us, and again, all our boards, authorities, and committees. So I have bylaws, especially so like a working document.
I think that it's good. I mean, reading over them this morning, which I did too, the same schedule here. I think it's important to have this all spelled out rather than just as institutional knowledge and people coming in or new commissioners and so forth. So that's great. There was only one technical thing, and I don't even know where it is now. I think it had to do with the agenda, like setting the agenda. And I just was like, oh, are we doing that now? There was something in here about like, the chair will ask at the end of each meeting if there's anything to add to the agenda for next week. Do we have that on the
I
agenda?
think we've informally done it. So for example, last month, I think it was Ms. Higgins that sort of suggested we take a look at the bylaws. And so I usually every month will make a draft of an agenda based on what I hear from the last meeting. I'll consult with Chair Fisher before I send it out to you all. But if we need to formalize that, I'll sort of let the chair and you all decide whether or not that's something you want to formalize more as part of the meetings.
Well, it just seemed to me that something that, sometimes there are people in the committees or in the community that are looking very closely at things and seeing what you're doing and not doing. And if we have it there as again, that it, you know, that we probably want to put it on the agenda. And just as we get through the attendance roll very quickly, we could get through the next month's agenda very quickly. So I just think there should be, if it's here, it should be on the agenda. Like if it's in the bylaws that we're saying we're formally asking for that. I mean, or bringing it up every meeting. I don't want to get caught on that we're not being open and allowing people an opportunity, because things could change. People will change. It's not down the road.
So on a draft agenda,
It just that it says, I mean, in here, I don't know where that item
I've
is.
got it, it's
It's
on,
a,
yeah, and what you could also consider is, at the conclusion of each meeting, the chair shall entertain suggestions from the membership. It could be may. That means, you could change the word shall to may if you want
Yeah.
to as well.
well, that's, I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
bring that up for discussion here.
Okay.
What your preference is, Chair.
so what I could do this also. When Gavin shares the agenda with me, I can share that with you guys too.
Well, this is at the end of the meeting. At the meeting, I just wanted to match up. It's not that big a deal. I just wanted to match up. So,
Well, you do that, yeah, I'm okay with that.
And if anything, we could, because it is in consultation with the internal auditor per the bylaws, as part of the internal auditor's update, I could make a mention of that at every meeting as well.
mhm.
That's up to you.
Cause normally we would have, this is came to the audit committee, anybody from.
You might change that to passive voice, so it's at the conclusion of each meeting, suggestions from membership for the next meeting will be taken, so that it could be either the chair or the auditor.
Or any members of the committee.
Right, but who will say, anyone have any ideas? So, right, now it says chair, so if it's Gavin, again, I just want it all to match up to start with.
We can work on that.
Okay.
Can I make a quick comment for the subject that we were working on, and part of my suggestion at the last meeting to cover the bylaws, and we did, and this is of course really important that we do this, but I also wanted to kind of include in this review of the audit committee, since we're here for a year and a half, so was the establishing documents for the audit committee as well. The first section of the bylaws is, of course, outlining the purpose and intent of the audit committee. And that's what caught my attention right away, that this was a subject that we touched on when we first came into being, was the purpose and intent of the audit committee. And what it does is goes back to the charter. So this is exactly what's written in the charter for the audit committee. And I just thought it was worthwhile on a annual or biannual basis to review the charter portion, the purpose and the functions of the audit committee. So I had done just a little bit of research, and I think I've shared it last year on the kind of best practices that are recommended for state and local governments on audit committees and what they do and how they do it. And of course, there's a whole spectrum of that. And we have been on kind of the narrow spectrum of what the audit committee does, which is just working with internal auditor's office. And some of the best practices recommend that audit committees look at the intersection between internal and external audit and internal control programs. And so there are from the Georgia Financial Officer Association, the audit committee, I'm sure you're familiar with it. So I just thought this might be something that we could review as part of the bylaw review. Is this, it may be exactly what we want and how we want to do it, but I also would like to broaden kind of the scope of the discussion on the function of audit committees and how they function and all the training requirements and all the other things that go along. So so I just wanted to bring that up to include the review when we review the bylaws or start to accept the bylaws for this, that we look at the original documents, the charter, to see if that's the kind of the governance that governance piece that we want to do. And if we're satisfied and happy and think this is what we want to do in Athens, or if we want to broaden it at all with some of the recommendations on best practices for audit committees.
Share the right on that. So I see you man over there working.
Yeah, no, what I would say is the auditor's responsibilities are established in our charter, and so those would be rather challenging to change. But the audit committee itself is As far as I know, it's an appointment made by the mayor, and so I think there is some broad, some possibility for a broad discussion on what the audit committee should look like, and should it perhaps become an official, commission that's established by the mayor and commission has an ordinance. Right now there isn't, as far as I'm aware, any kind of, what would I say, like a
Mhm.
authorizing document, creating the audit committee and telling it exactly what its jurisdiction is, other than that it works with the auditor. So I think that's something that the mayor and commission could discuss.
Yeah, I know that, last year, gosh, it's 2 years ago now. So, because I was sitting in this room, but I just pulled up this draft document that I worked on with, I can't remember who was on the committee, but and maybe it's, I don't know where it is, if it's, it had more things with the mission, goals, objectives and duties, and I think, because I worked a lot on this, and there was a whole section on independence and professionalism, and I don't know if that ever went anywhere in there.
Yeah, I've seen it and I've talked to the mayor about it. Ultimately, I think some of the suggestions may have gotten cleaned up between the
Yeah,
internal charter to the audit committee that you all have a copy
Yeah.
of, as well as there was an ordinance change. Some minor tweaks to the actual auditor's
yeah,
ordinance that resulted, but not everything, obviously, Commissioner, that was proposed. in
yeah, that was just
Yeah.
pulling out the best of, because there were two documents we were working on.
Correct.
So anyway,
I guess it was before my time.
yeah, that was 2 years ago.
What does you and Allison, we all.
No, it might have been Tim Denson. We were just putting together the stuff, the documents to get the reboot. I think that was what it was called, like the reboot of the Office of Operational Analysis. So we were just looking at a lot of different things there. So anyway,
Yeah, and I'm okay. We need to go down that route and talk with the mayor and commission now. Move forward with that.
So I think what my suggestion would be is, obviously we have some base bylaws in front of us and we can continue to work on those to get those established and sort of enacted and adopted, and those can always be changed, going forward. But I think it's like something key to go ahead and move forward on.
oh, you're right, and I apologize.
Oh.
This was the Office of Operational Analysis of the committee. I'm just like waking up here. Okay.
As far as a broader discussion about the internal charter, and I do want to make clear the charter document that you all have in front of you, to my knowledge, is internal to this group, and it was drafted, I believe, by my predecessor at the time. It's not something that is in an actual adopted ordinance, as Attorney Hines indicated, and quite honestly, other than under the auditor working with the audit committee, that's the only mention in the entire ordinance, I believe, of audit committee is in that one sentence. There are no established ordinances for the actual committee itself. But, we're certainly happy to work with you all. I think the bylaws should maybe come first as precedent as we continue along and have more consensus. I can certainly bring that up to the mayor as well as to what ideas you may have. I think it would be important to sort of draft those ideas first and then present it to the mayor, and see what the appetite is for some of those changes. But we would just have to balance as we go forward, as the attorney said, not only the ordinance of Athens-Clarke County, but then, there's best practices from the Georgia Finance Association and things that may or may not conflict with existing ordinance, especially with, the position of the internal auditor, for example, budgeting that falls within my realm. It's not something that would necessarily expand to the audit committee. And same with the daily operations of the Office of Operational Analysis, that would fall by ordinance with the internal auditor, not necessarily with the audit committee. But those are all things that we would just balance and look at as we continue to have that discussion. So,
Any other questions?
No, but I guess I do. The internal controls, Wouldn't that really be working more directly with the manager's office?
Yes.
Okay.
And then, of course, the external audits with the finance, that's also,
Yeah.
you know, one of the functions of audit committees is to ensure the relationship between the internal auditor and the external auditors, that there's a good relationship there to enforce the level of internal controls that normally the manager would be, whatever system for internal controls. If we have you know, an overarching one rather than individual departments having their internal control systems that you evaluate when you do your audits. So there's quite a few that are kind of common functions of audit committees at the governance level, but it's considered like a form of governance. So it's to find that level of assurance that the management and elected officials and the auditors want to see that these programs are in place. Not just the internal auditor function is like critical and like the hub around that. And that's why I think the audit committee has over the years always focused on the internal audit function, and the work plan is the primary job, as opposed to the overarching concept of audit in all its different aspects in the government. So I think that's why they recommend that. It's important always to have a double check on the financial side, and in the makeup of the audit committee, sometimes we're a little bit weak in the analysis of, say, financial documents and reviewing what comes through from the external auditors. Those are tough. Those are tough things to review and look at. So you need help in there. But that's, in my mind, that's kind of part of an audit committee, is to do that.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue. I know we did last year. We'll continue to make sure that as the external audits for the annual finance reports come out, that you all are given that same information. The finance director, David Boyd, as well as management, have always been willing to share that with us. And I mean, it's public knowledge as well. You know, Georgia law requires that those annual financial reports are actually done by a consultant, not by the internal auditor. I can't do it if I wanted to. And the only other thing that I would, you know, that sometimes can play a role in the authority of an audit committee, and again, this isn't to dissuade you from working on this, it's just to bring awareness, is the type of government that we have. And so, for example, with a strong city management governance system, both my role and your role are advisory in terms of, you know, here's a finding, here's a recommendation. Actual implementation, though, is very clear to fall upon management as to the day-to-day operations. And so, although it would be very good practice to advise management, here are some best practices for internal controls, and here's some governance things that we think are important for all departments. At the end of the day, you know, that's going to be the implementation and enforcement of that would fall upon management's purview. So,
Any other questions? Good discussion.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
all right. Moving on to item F, internal auditors update. As far as the calendar outlook, what I would suggest, and obviously this is up to y'all, is if all goes well today and we move on the cybersecurity report, we'll just be working on HCD. And so I don't anticipate there being any real business for you to vote on anyway in November. And so you could certainly consider whether or not a November meeting is necessary, but we would happily meet with you all before the end of the calendar year, before the holidays in December. The December 5th meeting would be the next regular meeting after the November. So, but that is up for y'all's discussion.
Any thought process from the committee about the November meeting?
Sounds like we should not have it.
So do I need to make a motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to form. Okay.
Then, motion by Mr. Blunt, second by
Second.
Okay.
Dr. Higgins. All in favor? And opposed? We will not be meeting at our November 7th meeting, but we will meet in December 5th meeting for the end of the year.
Good. And in between now and then, if y'all do have any suggestions about bylaws or anything, let me know. Email the group if you'd like. With regard to staffing, I just wanted to let you all know for about 2 weeks now. I think she's on her 3rd week. Our new intern, Amy Wen, started. She's an undergraduate senior at UGA. And so she's been working with us about 2 days a week and helping us out. So that's great to have her on board. And she'll be with us through this semester, December, January timeframe. So, and then as far as Peace Corps update, from September, we are keeping our average of about 60 overall hours, 15 a week, dedicated to Peace Corps activity. The Sheriff's Academy has started. I'm actually participating in that along with some of our members. It's a 5-week training program in the evening. It was last night for about 2 hours in the evening. And so very educational. I certainly advise anyone. It's open to the public, obviously. Both the Sheriff's Academy and the Police Academy are open to the public, and encourage anyone who's interested in learning about some of our public safety initiatives to join and do that. They do it each year. And from a complaint standpoint, we still have 1 active and then 1 pending complaint. So we're dealing with potential for 2 at the moment. So other than that, Chair, we look to enter into executive session on your call, and then we'll come back out of executive session to formally act, hopefully, on cybersecurity.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to enter executive session for us, or to deliberate upon cybersecurity plan procedures and our contracts regarding the provision of cybersecurity services. Executive session as is authorized by Code 50.14.3B5. Said documents also being releasable in whole or part under the Georgia Open Records Act, and subject to discussion in executive session as authorized by the Georgia Code 50.14.3B4. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Give me a minute.
And did we get that? I just want to make sure you had that vote just now.
Yes, we did.
Motion Myers and then seconded by. Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to accept it.
Yeah, so coming out of executive session, I'd ask that the committee consider moving forward to the mayor and commission with the recommendation that the cybersecurity attestation engagement be moved onward. So I'll let the chair.
To Gavin's comment, can I get a motion to move forward our cyber internal audit that was done to the mayor commission.
So, second,
We had a motion by Mr. Blunt, second by Commissioner Myers, all in favor, any opposed? Before we move to adjourn, any questions about anything we discussed today from our agenda?
no, but I'm just looking at on the agenda. So we've canceled the November 7th meeting. So the next meeting date is
December 5th.
December 5th.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll send out this.
Yes, we'll send that out.
This reminder.
Again, just to, with the permission of the chair, is there any specific topics for consideration on the next agenda?
Carry forward the discussion on the bylaws
Yes.
and then maybe any addition to the charter statement for the audit committee. And
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?